The official time is 9 a.m. and we'll open up the executive session for the Senate Education Committee.
Motion to go into executive session?
We are going into executive session. Have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yep. So we're gonna go through the ones that we did not get to last time. We're starting with 34. Senate Bill 34. I have an offer of vote. You have a motion? Okay, go ahead.
ITL.
Second.
Do I have second? I'm prepared to speak to my motion.
Okay, we have two ITL. Yes, you may speak to your motion.
So thank you, Chair Ward. I remain respectful of consent, especially as a medical professional. I understand the role of consent and parental consent, but initially consent is given. Secondly, we heard from a number of, not just advocates, but we heard from a Manchester School Board member, Sean Parr, and talking about the potential administrative burden as well as the cost to the taxpayers, because whether if they have to provide these services and they are unable to bill for them because they can't get consent, and it sounds like in Manchester in particular, not picking on Manchester, it's one place where they have great difficulty getting consent, then they still have to provide these services. They can't bill for them, so it ends up with the taxpayers. So I have a concern that we are shifting you're shifting the burden to the taxpayers and heavy administrative burden to the school districts. We also heard from community mental health centers, the community health representatives, one from the North Country in particular, about what this could do. So that's why I think there's a better way to do this than this. I just don't know what it is. Again, I respect consent, but I think we're shifting the burden and we could cost the taxpayers money. And that's exactly what Manchester told us. Thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I won't be supporting the ITL.
What did you say, Senator Evans?
I don't support the ITL.
You don't
motion.
support it?
I don't see anything wrong with getting parental consent.
Okay, you don't support 34. But that's, we have what, 3 ITLs and 34?
No, I don't support ITL.
Oh, I see, okay.
I hope a different motion is made.
You want to speak to it?
I don't, yes, I don't think there's anything wrong with getting parental consent, especially because it's providing a new service. I think they got consent to begin with. And no one complained about that being a cost burden on the school or over, a burden on the taxpayer. I mean, every time there's a field trip, there's a permission slip signed, you gotta get parental consent. I mean, it's pretty common. We're talking about children.
Senator Sullivan, do you have anything?
I agree. And as far as Manchester goes, if that's the problem they're having, they need to work harder to make sure that they're communicating with parents. And we have notices go out in every language. So if they're not able to get consent from parents, that's not a reason to be able to give services without consent. They need to try harder to get consent.
Well, my favorite, okay, do you want to speak first?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'd
go
love
ahead.
to. So and I appreciate my colleagues' perspectives on this, but I think we're oversimplifying the matter and saying that they have to try harder. They told us, not just the Manchester School Board, but we also heard from representatives from two of the, from Bi-State Primary Care that talked about the populations that they are unable to reach. And I'm sure that they can't reach them for school trips either. So if they can't reach them for school consents for school trips, then they can't reach them for these types of consents as well. I'm respectful of parental consent. My daughter had an IEP and a 504, and I went through the process, but they were able, I was in the school working with them. That seems to not be the case. And so it is, if we can't inexpedient to legislate this, then we should re-refer and work with the stakeholders to try to figure out what the strategies are before we just out of hand dismiss this. So thank you.
If I may, with all due respect to my colleague, this is a slippery slope. If we say that we just can't get consent, so we're going to do it anyway, where does that end when it comes to the schools? Is that just the blanket that we will that we will do from now on. Well, we couldn't find the parent, we couldn't get consent, so we're just going to take the child on the field trip and they won't know. Like that's a very slippery slope, I think, to go down.
No, I don't think, may I? I'm not suggesting they're taking the child on the field trip. I'm suggesting that if they can't get it for an IEP or a 504 to provide services that are covered by Medicaid, because that's the issue here, is getting reimbursement for these services so they can get the care that they need. We don't have to downshift those costs anywhere. So that's, the example came up of a school field trip. It would be my experience as a parent that if I didn't sign a consent for a field trip, she didn't go. So I'm not saying that that's what's happening, but I'm concerned that what I think is that there's a better pathway. So yeah, I took the first pass at trying to ITL this. I'd be happy to pull that back for a re-refer so we can actually work on this, because if there are ways to reach the populations, and it's not just one person that came in and said they can't reach these families, it's multiples. And so it makes me concerned, number one, that the kids can't get the services, that's the most important thing, is getting the services to the kids. And then we're talking about who's going to pay for them. And I'm all in favor of consent, but if we've got an unreachable population and children in need, and our interest is we're looking at the best interest of the children, which we talk about all the time, I'd want to try to take a different approach to this. So maybe my ITL was a little heavy-handed, but I think there's some work to be done. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And again, appreciate my colleagues' perspectives and respectfully as I do.
Madam Chair, it seems to me that if you run into a scenario where the school is unable to get contact with the student's parent or guardian, I mean, beyond this bill, that's a bigger problem. So my point is, that sounds to me, I know I heard the testimony, that seems like that's not the common, that's an anomaly. And frankly, if there was an emergency involving that child, what are they going to do? We just can't, we don't know where the parents are. I mean, they're going to send a child home after school. It seems to me that I'm not sure, I don't think parents are hiding from the school. So I think, I understand that not everyone is responsive to an email or responsive to a communication as the next person. But for this, I think
My understanding of this bill is it has to do with services to Medicaid enrolled students in the school. So I don't think we're talking about field trips. And I do think that you have to have some guardrails. You cannot treat a child if you have absolutely no information from the parents that this is okay. You leave it to the school office to decide whether or not to treat this child. You have no idea what the treatment is going to be. So I think that have a parental consent is absolutely necessary. And if you can't reach them, then I think that our emergency avenues, if something is really life-threatening.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's all, from just an application perspective, I can't imagine the school's not wanting to include the parents in the process.
Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the reset. Appreciate that. Just so we are all on the same starting point, this bill is not about field trips. This is not about getting a hold of parents during the daytime for emergencies. This is nothing to do with any of those issues. This bill is about written parental consent for new services to a Medicaid enrolled child. If we pass this bill, we are creating a two-tiered system of support for children, because a child who is the beneficiary of private insurance, their parents, during the course of a year or a week, when there is a change in their IEP, where, for instance, if they are receiving occupational therapy and the occupational therapist wants to add in a new skill or add in a new manipulative, they will be impeded from doing that until they get actual written consent from a parent. That will not apply. So a child who is progressing or regressing and needs a shift in their protocol that has been established with the parents will not be able to meet that child's needs in the moment without written permission from only only Medicaid enrolled children. This will not apply to children who have the benefit of private insurance. So this bill proposes and will immediately, if it passes, create a two-tiered system of support where Medicaid enrolled children's parents will have to reach a higher threshold to access the services that they are entitled to. And this bill actually, in addition to creating a higher bar for Medicaid enrolled parents, which I promise you, that's gonna end up in a lawsuit. It is a higher threshold than the federal government requires. So when the federal government puts requirements on how IEPs are rolled out and how children who are enrolled in Medicaid are served, we are adding an extra layer of burden onto those families, and we are leaving the privately insured families untouched, where only the federal requirements apply to the privately insured families, and the federal requirements that are applied to the Medicaid enrolled families now have to do more, and it's unfair.
I think that schools generally have a provision that anytime you do anything to the child, they call, the parents are informed. So I think in this case, it's just, we have singled out the Medicaid, but this goes for all the children in the school. I don't think you're going to have anybody giving treatment or even an aspirin to a kid without the parent knowing about it.
Madam Chair, thank you. Also want to just reiterate, this is only about IEP related services. This does not apply to getting an aspirin. This is only about the implementation of IEP related services. So we have to be, you have to know that if a child is progressing or regressing in the moment and an occupational therapist wants to try something different, or, they want to use a different manipulative, no go. If your kid is Medicaid insured, and the same child with the same challenges will get a different manipulative, will try a different therapy, will try a different process in the moment with that professional's opinion, who will then double back with the parents, because that's how the process works. And the Medicaid insured child will have to continue doing whatever it is that they are doing unless and until the school is able to get that written confirmation. So that kid is held back or not making the progress or not catching up, while the other kid is moving along or getting the services. So,
Senator Sullivan.
So are you saying that for the private insurance, they don't need approval? Because anytime that my child is needed anything through private insurance, it has to get approved by the insurance company before anything can happen. And it can be a lengthy process.
Understood. At the beginning, when a child gets an IEP or a 504 program, that is a group meeting at the beginning of the school year. Those are also done mid-year. They are also done at the end of the year. If in between those meetings, there needs to be a discussion with the parents, the special education coordinator at the school is empowered to talk to those parents about making modifications. And that is completely fine.
And
That
they
is
have to
how,
be approved through the insurance.
this is the federal regulations. So if you have to only get written consent for the Medicaid students, that's, you're putting up a barrier for students who are challenged enough already.
Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Chair Ward. It might be worth, I don't know if we want to ask Becky Wilson to weigh in, but just looking at her testimony and thinking just a little bit further about this, at the beginning of, so this is, the services are already consented for provision. It's, the issue is about the billing for those services, and they need to get that additional consent. So I just want to be correct about this, that at the beginning, because this is how it was with my child, I consented to all of the things that she could possibly need, but not all of them were applied. But if there was a choice to apply something different, like say she needed speech pathology or some type of OT that needed to be billed, then under the Medicaid program to schools, there would need to be consent for the billing. The consent for the services, as I understand, is already taken place, and I think I started rolling this out the door the wrong way, and Senator Altshuler reminded me, and then I pulled Becky Wilson's testimony, and so that's up to you whether you want to talk to Becky or not, and that aligns with what we heard from from Bi-State Primary Care, and we heard from the Manchester School Board, is that if they can't get consent to bill, they will have to eat the cost, they will have to absorb the cost of offering those, and that's the downshift to the taxpayer.
Or not offer. Or not, or just not
I want to
offer.
be clear, because I think, oh, sorry,
Well,
no, so that's, I mean,
what we can do, this is not an FN bill, so we have a little bit more time. What I'm willing to do is to withdraw everything and find out exactly what this is, because my understanding was it is not just the IEPs, but it's the whole school health program that people are getting into. And I think it is not very well laid out here. But I think that is the thing that the parents need to know about, because if the school nurse or the school doctor decides that the child needs a psychiatric evaluation, certainly the parents would like to know. So I think that this encompasses more than just the educational part of it. I think it involves physical, medical, health care as well. And that's why I want to be absolutely sure that we have that taken care of, that we know for sure. So I'm willing to let this go for another 2 weeks, and we can work on the details and be able to really find out what this is all about.
Just to your point, on line 16, it does say a child's participation in any program that provides medical or dental treatment in
Right.
any school.
Right.
And so it's not limited to IEPs.
So
I-
is
I-
that
I
okay
think
with
the con-
everyone?
I'm ready to go today, but I'll respect the chair's preference. I think I would prefer to move forward with an OTP. I think this is pretty clear what it does. And I really am not accepting that it's such a undue burden on the schools to get a parent's written consent. I mean, we're talking about responding to an email. I mean, a lot of schools have these apps where they send the messages on, but written consent, it's not like they have to go down there and get a notarized,
I
document.
agree with you. I think emails, and I think a
This is
phone call, most
very
people have cell phones.
straightforward, and
Yeah.
everyone thinks consent is fine, but requiring it is the problem. Frankly, I think it's,
Well,
I
as
think
long
it's
as we
straightforward.
understand, as long as the understanding is that this is not just for the IEPs, but it's for the provide health care, medical care provided by the schools.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's line 16 and 17,
Yeah.
even goes to dental care. So it's not just an IEP.
Right. Okay,
I'm ready to move on.
okay. So do I have another motion?
no, I wanted to know how we're going to proceed to get clarification on that, because I have a different understanding. And are we going to engage, some, like Becky Wilson, Barry Christie, some of the folks who are, who deal with this every day to make sure that we're 100% clear? Because I don't believe this belongs to medical care, but I see what Senator Sullivan and Senator Abbas are pointing to on medical or dental. My understanding of this from the onset was this had to do with the Medicaid schools services for IEPs and 504s, that the consents for all the possibilities were done up front, and that this is about billing, consent for billing, and there may be some disagreement on our ability to reach parents, but it's not something new to me to hear that from people who've come in to testify about the difficulty in reaching some parents sometimes based on a whole host of circumstances. I think we just have to be 100% clear. Or how are we going to engage stakeholders to make sure we've got this right?
I'm not sure that it's our responsibility to decide how to get hold of the stakeholders. I think if this is a program in the schools, I
here.
think the school has the ability to find out for themselves what is the best way to reach the parents. I don't think it's up to us to decide this is the way you should do it and how, and leave it at that.
No, I just wanted to get clarification that not about how to reach the parents, but is this just for the IEPs? Okay? Or is it all encompassing of everything medical? Because it seems to be that we are split on that. And I do see the language in here that says provides medical or dental treatment, but
Consent of parent or legal guardian required.
Although I don't agree with my friend's interpretation, I think it applies to, any type of medical service. I would support it under either interpretation. I would support not to pass because I still think getting parental consent for a new service is appropriate.
But I think that any program that provides medical or dental treatment in any school setting shall require the explicit written consent of the child's parent or legal guardian for each new service as defined by a new diagnostic billing code. I'm fine with it. I mean, I'd like to see that the schools are responding to the parents and try to reach them. And I realize that it's not possible at all times to find somebody, but I think with the computers, with the emails, with the cell phones that we have, most people are reachable. And I'm just curious how many times you can't reach a parent. So,
Madam Chair, I think there's a pending motion of ITL, or could I make a motion about to pass?
yeah, I think
it
there
is,
was
it's a
dispose of
full,
the ITL
full
first.
service.
Before we go forward, could I ask, what is the sign-in and what were, like, how many people supported, how many people opposed? I'm missing that.
506 in support and 42 opposed.
Okay,
Wait, sorry.
Okay.
Online sign-in, we had 169 opposed.
it was January 21st.
Thirty-four online, 20 in support, and 11 opposed. And then the actual committee here.
That was the online, thank you.
I don't know the exact number in front of me for total, but it's all enumerated in the.
Thank you.
So what do we have?
So I think we have to either vote on the ITL motion, or if it's withdrawn, I would make a motion about to pass.
Okay.
So I'm not gonna withdraw my ITL, so let's just vote on it
Okay.
and go from there.
So we have a motion of ITL. Who votes for ITL?
Aye.
Aye.
So that's 2. Okay, and the 3
No.
or no? So that's 2 to 3. Okay, do we have another motion?
Ought to pass?
Ought to pass?
I'll second.
And with a second? All those in favor of ought to pass?
Aye.
Aye. So that's 3. So that's 3, 2. Who wants to take it out? You
Are
wanna
we-
Take it out?
I can take it out.
Are you gonna,
It can't go on consent.
just didn't call the nays? I just,
Did what?
as a
The
matter
nays,
of
like-
protocol, do we call the nays? I'm gonna vote nay
Yes,
for the record.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Me too.
Yep,
Thank you.
I heard that. And Abbas will take it out. Okay, that's one. The next one is 57. That is the study committed to analyze reducing the number of school administrative units.
Make a motion about to pass.
We have a motion of ought to pass. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Senator Prentice.
I was just gonna ask, we had an amendment that Senator Alschuler had brought forward, 111S, and she was speaking to that. It was new to us. the last time we took this up.
Okay.
I don't know if we have the opportunity to hear from Senator Alschuler as to what she has worked on here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you want to discuss it? You
Yes,
have- do you have
so I brought this forward earlier, and I'm glad we had a little time to allow for the committee to dig into it over the past week or so. And so in giving fidelity to Senator Murphy's bill, his presentation was that we should look at another option or another possibility of how to organize our school districts. And, you know, the current SAU system is, we've been using this for a very long time, and he had an idea that there would be a possibility of shifting to a countywide system, allowing for two of the largest districts, Nashua and Manchester, to be their own. So that'll be 12 districts. And so just moving on that and building on his proposal, all I did was add in people who have, who are the stakeholders. So, you know, at the time of the committee's presentation, the presentation of the bill, we did not hear from the counties, and we hadn't heard from any of the school districts. And so, you know, we only heard from some former school board members, and I think one advocate. So, you know, we're not hearing from the School Administrators Association. We're not hearing from the counties, the county Administrators Association, and those voices are vital to having this discussion in a, you know, in a way that is real. And so my proposal is that, you know, you include the New Hampshire Municipal Association, the New Hampshire School Boards Association, and, you know, membership from 4 joint school boards, so that we get broad representation, you know, across the state to really have this conversation. That's it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your work. I would say Senator Murphy just set up that we need to do something. We need to take a look at this, and he's setting up who should be on the committee. Usually, I think it has been the committee members or the chair of the committee who decides whom they need to hear from. So I don't know if we need to spell out for that committee who they should talk to. What you have done here is making a suggestion for what they should do, but I'm hoping that the committee has enough knowledge and understanding between them that they know who they should be speaking to.
Actually,
Yes, Senator Prentice?
Thank you, Chair Ward. I just think it's really important to point out, and I appreciate Senator Murphy's work on this, and I think that Senator Alschuler's attempt to clarify this, especially if only we address the counties, because this is a study committee that looks at shifting to a county model, but the counties, and Senator Murphy fairly said he had not worked with them yet on this. And I also spoke to some of the county officials where I'm from, and they would want to be part of this dialogue because we're looking at shifting to a completely different model. So if at the minimum we make a requirement that the counties have a seat at the table, I mean, I think that that's our duty. And I'll also offer that I had a study commission that I was working on with Senator Rochefort that had to do with a completely different topic. And we were very specific as to the organizations that had to be represented at the table, and even took some testimony about adding another group, being very prescriptive. So you have a choice with these to be less prescriptive or more. At a minimum, if there's hesitation, engage the counties because they're being asked to pick this up.
Madam Chair,
Senator Abbas?
this amendment, it's one thing to have a shall apply to what, you know, the directive of the committee is studying.
Yeah, that's line 26.
But having a shall on who they must consult with, I think takes away the the discretion of the committee. I mean, saying that they shall consult with a listed number of different organizations, which, by the way, if they don't consult with some of these, the county commissioners, the municipal association, I don't think that the committee is doing a good job studying what they set out to study, but I think mandating that or making that a required directive is not something that I would support. So I'm not going to support the amendment. I think the underlying topic that they're studying, I think it's going to be far-fetched. I'd even never support that policy, but I think if they want to study it, maybe it might work in a different county. Maybe they want to consider it as an opt-in. I don't know. I'll leave that to what they come up with. I know, where I live in Salem, it would be very difficult to have the county running the school. I think, especially when I see a system that's operating very
Want
well.
to say something?
Oh, no, I'm listening to Senator Abbas
Okay.
So,
intently.
but I don't think I can support the amendment.
I think it's Senator Alshar. has her hand up.
Then the Ursula.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, just for clarification, it is not unusual for the legislature to be prescriptive in who has to participate in a committee, of who has to be consulted. I've been on them. We've all been on committees. And like Senator Prentice said, some of them are widely open-ended. And, depending on the view of the chair and capacity of the chair, and capacity is a very, very big deal. It is, creativity will either flourish or, be level, will be kind of flat. And this just says, look, be as creative as you like. Ask anyone you talk to, but you have to, because you want to look at going to a municipal county school system. And so at minimum, you shall consult with the municipal association and the county commissioners and the school boards association. Those are the stakeholders. This is the system that you want to look at dismantling and reconstituting in a different space. And so you have to bring in the people who are going to have to reconstitute school systems and how it's going to affect county taxes and county government. How are we going to have to change county government? Are commissioners going to get new responsibilities? These are real questions that we have to look at if we're going to look at a study committee to change the number of school districts. So, it's a minimum requirement. Doesn't say they can't do more. It just says you got to pull in the bare minimum stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
So
I will say we're kind of saying the same thing, even though we disagree. If this study committee recommends some form of legislation, comes before this committee, and I'm sitting here, and they haven't met with any county commissioner or the municipal association or any of the school boards, that recommendation from that study committee is going to hold virtually no weight on someone like myself, because I'm going to look at whatever they study as being, when I say incomplete, maybe that's my subjective view of it. I think I'm going to leave that to the study committee, to what they want to come up with, because it's going to take a lot to convince me to support going to a county system anyway. But I just mandating who they have to actually consult with, I think is going too far.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So saying that this, given that when this legislation came to us, none of these stakeholders had been involved leading up to this legislation, it's not inappropriate to say, okay, your idea is a valid idea, but in the execution of that idea, this needs to happen. The author of the bill had the opportunity to put this in, to do exactly what you said, make sure that all voices are heard. Didn't do it. We just need to put that in there so that whoever is appointed as the chair of this committee, maybe it'll be you, Senator Abbas.
Well, they don't want me
Well,
on as the chair.
who
I just said that they're going to be hard pressed getting me to support a countywide system.
that
If you look at, Salem schools, I have a view because I live in a town where the
Yeah,
school's running.
let's keep to the
Yeah,
amendment
but
here.
yeah. So nonetheless, this just tells the chair, in order to bring forward the information that may or may not become legislation, you have to have consulted stakeholders.
It does say from the transition from a municipal school district system to a county school district. So that's number one that they have to look at. Consider reducing the number of SAUs from each county and one from Manchester to Nashua.
Yes, that's Senator Murphy's language.
Especially looking at savings from the economies of this stuff.
That's the original, yes.
That's the original.
That's
That's what I'm
the
looking
original.
at, what he has put in there.
So
I
10,
would, I would be willing to put in, suggested stakeholders to contact and then make that the municipal, well, obviously the county commissioners. Put in a committee amendment that's suggesting that the committee meets with the county commissioners, New Hampshire Municipal Association, and the school board. But I'm
so is
very
your
reluctant
suggestion
to do that.
change shall to may on line 26?
No, I don't want to have shall.
No, I said, is your suggestion to change shall to may?
Yeah. But I mean, I wouldn't take the whole thing. I would just
Just
make
make
a suggestion that these would be
may.
stakeholders that they should
Yeah.
contact. But on
So-
the other hand, I'm reluctant to do that because I really feel that a study committee should know who to contact in order to resolve these kinds of issues. And my thing would be to leave it to the chair and the committee members to decide what do we need to know, who do we need to talk to, instead of having this committee saying, these are the people you have to talk to.
So the suggestion would be you know, the committee may consult with county commissioners, the municipal association, the New Hampshire school boards, joint school boards. So they may
I
call
think
them, they may not.
Yeah, I'd be willing to add that.
May?
As a-
Change,
well,
sh-
add that
change shall to
sentence.
may.
The committee may
May,
consult with county commissioners from each county. the
which
New
allows
Hampshire
them to do whatever.
Municipal Association, the New Hampshire School Board Association, and just put that in.
Okay. If that gets us across the finish line, okay. I'm not gonna,
Madam Chair, I'll just clarify, if you look at the amendment, it's lines 26 to 29, we would just take just that sentence and add that to the original bill, but change on
I'm
line,
talking about this sentence on line 26.
yes, so you
Right.
take that sentence and add it to the original bill, but you change the
And
shall
going
to
down
may.
as far as the 26
that's what the
and
amendment is.
27.
That's the only change.
I'm just clarifying it.
Yeah,
Just
that's the,
adding that.
that's the change that I made to,
Yeah. The question is, where should we put that?
hi. Welcome.
There-
Yeah.
There's some other changes
change.
though, I mean,
So how about putting a committee amendment on line 14 in the original bill? Yeah, consolidation, adding in, the committee may commit and may consult with county commissioners from each county, the New Hampshire Municipal Association, the New Hampshire School Board, and the New Hampshire School Board Association.
So we're moving this language into the original bill.
Taking that sentence and
Taking-
putting it in at the line
So you're
14.
making a committee amendment, okay.
Yes.
Just making sure I'm following along.
Yeah, just
just like,
making, mandate a committee amendment.
So you want to leave out the joint school boards and the,
Yeah,
Analyzation.
I think so. I really
what about
think
the
so.
analyzation of impact on county taxes, costs and benefits to larger countywide districts and the tax impact on residents?
Consider savings from economies of scale. Logistical changes and outcomes. I think that they have enough to go on. We already talking about the impact of the taxes and and that obviously goes into the whole thing.
But Madam Chair,
Yes.
I see where you're looking at line 13 on the original bill. The committee shall especially consider savings from economies of scale.
Yep.
I respectfully, I think, and the impact on county taxes.
Okay, we can add that.
In line 10, it says the committee shall analyze the administrative, financial, and logistical changes. I think financial would incorporate taxes, but
And
We
the
can-
impact of,
saying it twice, I don't think changes anything, but
you said county taxes?
Yes.
Okay, so we go back. The committee shall, in the original bill, line 14. The committee, no, line 13, the committee shall especially consider savings from economies of scale, giving a potential consolidation and the impact of county taxes, followed by the committee may consult with county commissioners from each county, the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and the New Hampshire School Boards Association. Did you get that? Okay. Now, is that okay?
I'm good. Did you catch? Yeah. Oh, okay.
So that would be a committee amendment. Are you okay with that, all
Oh,
of you?
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All those in favor of the committee amendment? To the
Aye.
Aye. So that's committee amendments. Would you read back so that that you have it? To read back what we just said.
I was going to grab these. You gave me a list of names. I was going to grab that and get from the video afterwards,
Okay.
so that I didn't slow you guys down.
So the committee shall especially consider savings from economies of scale. And then after consolidation and the impact of county taxes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have the sentence, the committee may consult with county commissioners from each county, the New Hampshire Municipal Association and the New Hampshire School Boards Association. Okay? Okay, you ready to vote on the committee amendment? We said we did that.
We just did that.
Okay,
We're
The
gonna,
whole thing.
it's ought to pass
do we
as
have
amended.
the, okay, let's go back now to the original bill with the committee amendment. What is the vote?
So it's ought to
Oh,
pass as
ought to
amended.
pass.
I move
Second.
OTPA.
No, to pass with committee amendment. All those in favor? It's 5-0. Now, do you want to
Aye.
put this on consent?
Move for consent.
Sure.
Yeah.
Move.
Consent?
I'll second.
Okay. On consent, all those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye, it's 5-0. Okay, great. And who wants to take it out?
I'll take it out.
Well, Sheila will take it out.
It'll be my first one from this committee.
Okay. We only have 15 more minutes of an hour.
$69.
69, acceptance or rejection of charitable contributions gifts.
I'd like to make a motion of opt to pass.
I'll second that.
All those in favor of ought to pass? Any discussion on this bill?
I appreciate Senator Murphy bringing forward a real, an issue and a way to resolve it so that school districts around, schools and school districts around the state have a model, have some language to follow and guidance. It's good.
I had a concern at the beginning because I said, what about a discussion for accepting gifts? But then I read the bill again and I
Yeah.
see that it's all covered, so I'm fine with it.
And it's happened in more than one district, not just
Yeah.
And in Senator Murphy's district, it's happened in District 10 as well, which I shared with him.
So I have an OTP with a second, and all those in favor of OTP?
Aye.
That's 5-0.
Move for consent.
Who wants to take it out? Consent.
I'll second.
Or consent?
Oh, yeah, consent. Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Who wants to take it out?
I'll take it out.
You want to take it out? Sullivan? Uh, how about 98?
I'm sorry,
It's
what number did you
97.
say?
98.
Do we have time, 97? All right, interdistrict public school transfers.
Oh, 97 or 98?
97 or 98.
You want to do 97?
I don't know.
So I think we need more time for 97, Daryl.
Okay.
I think there's some questions.
Let's see,
97
About
or 98.
98. I'd like to see some of these things that we can get rid of.
98 is also, so, are we gonna do 98?
Yeah,
Hold on 98.
Yeah.
You're still working on 87?
no, that's gonna, we're gonna hold that one.
You wanna hold it?
We're still working on it.
Okay, good, perfect. Happy, good, okay. So if we're gonna do 98, I'll make a motion, ought to pass.
I have a motion, ought to pass, or have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor of ought to pass?
Aye.
Aye.
Move consent.
Consent?
Second. Oh, give it,
All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
You want to take it out, Prentice?
Prentice will take it out, yes.
How about 99? Regional career and technical education agreements.
Okay. 99.
Have a motion for that one? Actually, it's a very good bill. Gives
Yeah.
a choice to the students.
I
on
make a
to
motion
pass.
not to pass, oh, Senator Abbas has it, I'll second it.
Ought to pass.
Ought to pass. All those in favor of ought to pass?
Aye.
Aye. Consent?
Move for consent.
Second? All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
5-0. Who wants to take it out?
I can take it out.
Abbas will take it out.
So he already has it there.
99. What about 100? 100? 100? It's a very short,
There's an amendment to 100. I have to look at that statute.
you have a motion on 100?
I'm gonna, if you could just give me a minute to look at this, I need to look at this. 193, sorry, I've been
193.40?
out sick, 193. I'm sure.
Madam Chair, right? If you-
Sorry, what
Are you
number?
recognizing someone for a motion?
She's looking up the RSA. We're doing 100.
100?
Because it makes it on line 7, it's the dangler of following. I just want to go, sorry, I've been out for a couple days sick, so if you can just give me a little
That's fine.
room, I will figure this out.
Yeah, that's what I was looking.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
I have in my notes that we are waiting for an amendment from Senator
it.
Lang. I don't, okay,
It's amendment.
May I have one?
4276.
I don't have it.
You have the amendment?
I do, but I want to hold on to
Yeah,
it.
no, no,
'cause
but
I'm-
you know, somebody who doesn't have the amendment?
I don't, not in this, nope.
We have at least 2 committee members who don't have it, I think.
I can give you my copy if you want to run in and vote. Who doesn't have it? You don't have it.
Someone's copying.
Here.
Copy.
Thanks.
Still look at it now.
So this is not a replace all, it's just replacing section 1.
It's
Okay.
just- It's a very
I think
short-
it adds a,
Yeah, but it is attached to a whole list.
Okay, so
So, and
it adds a mens rea to the first section, and then the initial bill strikes there's 2 types of penalties or potential consequences of a violation. One obviously is, a person can bring a civil action, that still exists, but this would strike the violation subjecting the,
violation of the code of conduct.
yes,
If
the
they were
teacher
to-
to potential, yes.
If they were to teach any of these things that's on this list, that's on the amendment 0276, is that?
No, I think that list already exists. I think
I know.
it just adds the knowingly or intentionally provision to it, so it has
The
to.
list does, yes, Senator Evans, it does exist. I'm just I'm just going through it here and connecting it to here, so it's all one package.
Madam Chair? I have notes from the hearing that this would would create a conflict without also addressing, this amendment does not address the issues that came up in the committee hearing about the effect that this would have on RSA 354-A semicolon 29, semicolon 30, semicolon 32, semicolon 33. So there's 4 other spaces in statute that now would not be in alignment.
Okay.
So, yeah, this,
With the amendment? Or with the original?
both.
Well, you don't have the amendment, yes, you can't.
I'm borrowing Senator Abbas's copy. So, and
I'm
I'm
waiting
just
for my
pulling
copy.
up,
Here, you can now have mine, because I got where I need to go. Thank you,
Well, can you repeat
So
those
what the
hours?
bill,
Ninety-three.
what the bill really says at this point, amend the bill, replacing section 1, repeal RSA 19340, to replace that with, no pupil in any public school in this state shall be intentionally or knowingly taught, instructed, inculcated, or compelled to express belief in or support for any or more of the following. And the following is a list in the RSAs.
well, regardless, I don't think this is a necessary bill. So,
I think the court,
So if the original
the court is fine.
was not aligned with 4 points that you mentioned.
Yeah.
What about this amendment?
this amendment doesn't mention them either, so
Thank you, Deborah.
can you repeat those RSA's that it wasn't aligned with?
I'm good, thank you.
354
Senator Ward, mine.
semicolon
Thank you, Deborah.
29. And then just go same
No, 7.
semicolon 30, 32, 33. Thank you. That's actually, copy that.
I need.
You have one, don't you? No. Yes, right there.
That's the amendment. Oh,
That's
this
the
is
amendment. That's what you need.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
okay,
why I
got
took
it.
mine back. Sorry.
Okay.
I think in the, I'm not sure we're gonna be able to finish this one.
No, we have 5 more minutes.
Because there's something that's not connected.
So Senator Altshuler, with this amendment, does that align with those 4 points that you mentioned, or are they disaligned with them?
This doesn't address that concern that came up in the committee.
Okay, so
And I'm just uncomfortable
well, I
with
need
it,
I
so
need a motion on this
I'm not
bill.
making
Well,
Move
do
on
we
to
need a
pass.
motion or can we?
Well, we need
I'm
the
not-
motion for the bill
A motion's been made.
and then the amendment
Madam Chair, I
it has not
recognize,
been seconded.
I would make a motion to vote to pass.
on the original bill. Okay.
I'll
Okay.
second.
All those in favor, no, a discussion about to pass. I think we have discussed that. Before we do anything on the underlying bill, we need to talk about the amendment.
In in respect
What
to
is-
amendment 0276S,
Huh?
I think having the intentionally knowingly
Okay,
provision in there makes it very clear. Some of the concerns I heard about from teachers when this passed a few years ago was, if it was not intentional, incidental. I think saying knowingly or intentionally makes it pretty clear when this would apply
okay,
and when, a cause of action would be permitted. And I think striking the Roman numeral 4, that there was some, I think the courts had some concerns about the ambiguity of that particular section. So I think my understanding was this bill was, by striking that section, was really intended to address the court case. So I would
any other
support
further discussion?
I would support the amendment as well.
I support the amendment as well. I think it takes care of any misinterpretation that might happen
Okay.
in the classroom and protects the teachers a bit.
So I have a, ought to pass on the amendment and have a second. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Night.
Okay, 3-2. Okay, we'll go back to the underlying bill. We have the ought to pass on the underlying bill. We'll pass it with the amendments. 376.
I'll pass as amended.
Any further discussion?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a yes and
I
a
think that-
second.
Oh, okay.
And favor of ought to pass on 100 FN? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nope.
No.
Nope. Okay, there's 3-2, okay. Okay, maybe I'll take this one out. And I think that takes care of what we can do this morning. I appreciate very much your work on this. We have 1 minute.
We could do the, it's a 102, the one on
18.
diabetes.
It's 9:59.
No, we have public hearing at 10, so
Okay.
we have, if we have time afterwards, we can go through the rest of them. Other than that, we'll do that on the 3rd of March. Still have a stack of them. One more minute, and then we'll open up the public session. Wait for her to come in. We have to get out of executive session. We have to get out of executive session.
Motion to get motion to move out of the executive session.
Second.
We're out of executive session.
Do we vote? Aye.
Okay, welcome everyone. We are now doing the Senate Education public hearing on a couple of bills. But before we do that, I'd like to have Senator Abbott say the Pledge of Allegiance for all of us.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first bill is 208 FN, requiring local school boards and public libraries to adopt curation policies. And Senator Altschuler will introduce the bill.
Good morning. Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Senator Deborah Altschuler, representing the seacoast towns of Exeter, Stratham, Greenland Rye, Hampton, Northampton, and Hampton Falls. Senate Bill 208, the Granite State Literacy Act, is a bill that celebrates curiosity and protects the quest for knowledge, supported by our Granite State public and our public school libraries. High-functioning societies need access to information. We've known this since 1717, when New Hampshire set the stage for the nation in opening the first New Hampshire State Library, first in the nation. It opened with just 2 books and a proclamation by the New Hampshire General Assembly and has been growing its collection for the past 308 years. In 1833, the town of Peterborough opened the first free public library in the state, becoming a symbol of the town's belief in free access to information. And the library's establishment inspired the New Hampshire State Legislature to pass a law in 1849 that authorized towns to raise money for libraries, and there are over 240 to date. Newt High School in Milton, New Hampshire, had a library in 1894. The school had 900 volumes in its library. And while my district can claim the first public school, the Center School of Hampton, established in 1647, the honor of the first public school with a library belongs to the Newt Public School in Milton. They established a public school library first. So for over 300 years, our public school libraries have offered free access to a wide range of educational resources like books, magazines, digital materials, databases, audio recordings for all students. They provide a space for community connection and learning. The knowledgeable staff are there to assist with research and offer programming. Our public school libraries are safe, welcoming, accessible spaces for everyone, regardless of background or income level. The American Library Association, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be reading the entire packet for you, but I will highlight, well, we can all probably agree that public school libraries are vital to the knowledge base and growth of our communities. The materials in them are not all celebrated equally. Limiting access to, banning, or all-out destroying materials that are perceived as a threat to the power structure is a part of human history. These types of actions have had a concerning exponential growth in America. The American Library Association has reported that in 2022, we had the highest record for book banning attempts in the U.S., and that is in the 20 years that the ALA has been collecting such data. The bill before you has 2 components, the first for public school libraries and the second for public libraries. As we know, we all had some challenges in getting our drafts redrafted during our bill filing session, which required us to push the deadlines up further and further. So unfortunately, there are 2 issues with this bill that I would like to draw the committee's attention to and ask for your grace in recognizing those challenges at the beginning of the session. First, I want to point out that although this bill is labeled an FN, it is not. The fiscal note is 0. This is a policy bill, not a program proposal. In fact, the fiscal note says, based on information received from the Department of Education and the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, it is assumed all requirements of this bill would be absorbed with existing state and local staffing levels. No incremental impact on state, county, and local revenue or expenditures expected. I hope that that encourages the committee's favor. At this point, I would ask the committee to consider also bifurcating the bill and amending it to exclude the second part of the bill, beginning on page 4, line 5, related to public libraries. The individually independent library boards of trustees that make up our public library system address curation and public input at the local trustee level. Including them in Senate Bill 208 is unnecessary at this time. So we are working with the very beginning of the bill, pages 1 through 4, up to line 5. So here in the Granite State, which is just public school libraries, we value the free exchange of ideas and access to diverse materials so that we may not be just exposed to, but rise to the challenge of learning. Senate Bill 208 does the following things that are critical to maintaining an informed community with healthy access to all sorts of ideas. It protects intellectual freedom, provides professional recognition and protection. This bill acknowledges the professional training of school librarians and media specialists who typically hold master's degrees in library science or related fields. This bill acknowledges this expertise by stating that these professionals are, quote, trained to curate and develop library collections that provide students with the widest array of material available. It provides clear and standardized procedures. It provides legal protections against intimidation by providing immunity from legal action, affirmative legal rights, and financial protection. It addresses the systematic protection of professional judgment, creating a framework where professional decisions are given appropriate weight in the review process. Librarians will have a seat at the table in review committees, and their expertise is ingratiated into the decision-making process. Personal opinions cannot override professional standards without documented justification. It provides contemporary relevance, a maintenance of professional standards, and this approach represents a crucial pushback against the devaluation of expertise by codifying the importance of professional training, providing real consequences for harassment, creating financial disincentives for frivolous challenges, and protecting the application of professional standards. This bill recognizes that while community input is valuable, it must be balanced with professional expertise, particularly in an area where expertise itself is under attack. This balance helps ensure that public school libraries can continue to serve their essential role in maintaining an informed and literate democracy. Senate Bill 208 represents a balanced approach to protecting both intellectual freedom and appropriate content curation while providing clear procedures and protections for school library staff. It achieves these goals without additional cost to taxpayers, making it both principled and practical legislation. I encourage the committee to bolster New Hampshire's historic tradition of providing access to all manners of information to its citizens by sending Senate Bill 208 to the floor without to pass recommendation. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? I have a question.
I'm just going to grab, Senator Ward, I'm going to grab my copy, which is right there.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you said this is not, this bill has no fiscal implication.
It does not.
So who is going to develop it? What about the time and effort to develop these policies? Is
So-
that going to be done by the library staff on their own?
So the curation of and development of policies at the local level is already happening. So this provides a framework for processes that are already happening. This is not an added policy. It is there are policies. There are few public schools that do not have policies. There are some public schools that have very broad policies that are kind of plug and plays, if you will. And then there are some public schools that have very comprehensive, detailed policies. We are looking to have access to that gold standard for every public school in New Hampshire.
So
So hence the
curation really means how do you take care of the materials that you have?
an acquisition. Curation includes
It's just
acquisition.
the care of the material, the care of the books and the.
And
whatever else.
acquisition,
Yeah,
right. Acquisition and care.
Okay, and
Yep.
then on page 1, line 13,
Yes.
to
13.
assist school boards in developing such policy, the Department of Education shall develop a model policy. Do they have it, or have you spoken with them?
They do not have a model policy that I am aware of, no.
Okay. So you say they shall develop a model policy.
Yes, but that model policy has to be in consultation with the professional organizations of library sciences
Okay.
in the state.
So what I'm saying is that you are telling the Department of Education that they have to develop this policy.
They have to develop a model
Yes.
to serve the public schools of the state
Okay.
with something for them to work with, which is within the purview of the Department of Education to provide resources
Right.
to the public schools.
Have you spoken to them with them about this?
I have not.
Okay. That's it for me. Anybody else? Senator Sullivan.
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking my question. So I can't support this bill for a number of reasons, but it looks like, in my interpretation is when you're talking about personal opinions, it seems to be referring to parents, I would think, and professionals or the librarians that know better than the parents, offering immunity, blanket immunity, which is just troublesome. But on the first page, I guess it's the second page, line 27, it says such diverse points of view shall include any material representing or author. Did you mean any material?
So, I mean, you have to take that line in context with the entire paragraph. Is recognize that library materials should be provided for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all people, and require that all students be provided with access to library materials that offer diverse points of view in the collection as a whole. Such diverse points of view shall include any material representing or authored, illustrated, or produced by any members of a protected class. So, and later on in the bill, as I know because you've read through it, is that it does delineate age appropriate by grade. So, yeah,
So you
I
did
think
mean
that
any
I think that answers the question. Yes, and also as a point of clarification, Senator Sullivan, I did not mention parents in this bill, and so what we have heard across our state is that parties who are not parents, have no students in the school, are not even connected to certain communities, show up in communities to which they have no connection, to challenge the work of a school committee and school board to which they do not belong, do not pay taxes, do not have children, do not have grandchildren, nieces, nephews, zero connection. So we are looking to make sure that the professionals in library sciences and the stakeholders in those school communities have the most impact in those policies.
Paula?
Thank you. Right, you're correct. Thank you for pointing out the fact that you don't mention parents, because you don't have a carve out for parents to have the final say in these policies. So was that the intention?
Well, to clarify, parents always have the final say because they always have the opportunity to pull a piece of material for their child. You can always restrict access to a curriculum for your child and request an alternative. That is already available. What we are looking for is not restricting access. If one parent has a problem that they want to address with their own child, do it. But what you cannot do is superimpose that onto all the other children after a very comprehensive process has gone through that takes into account the professionals of library sciences who can determine, with the input from school board members, who are most often parents, what the appropriate curriculum is. And this is a collaboration as outlined in this policy, a collaboration that addresses appropriate, age-appropriate curriculum materials. So what's appropriate and available to a kindergartner is not the same as what's appropriate and available to a sophomore in high school.
Any other questions? Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I see my friend from the ACLU has arrived, so he might want to take a stab at this one. Maybe not. On page 3, lines 25 to 29, and I'm not sure the answer to this, but a school librarian talks about a positive action they would have, whether it's libel, slander, defamation. Is a school librarian in a public school considered a government official? And the reason why I'm asking is, would that be a New York Times versus Sullivan issue?
I am unfamiliar with that. And in this section 2 on page 3, it specifies their teaching staff member. So I can't speak to that case. I do not have any information about it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions? Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair. And I beg my leave as I am supposed to be introducing another bill at this moment. Thank you.
Jocelyn Benson? What was it? Oh, Jacqueline, I'm sorry.
Sorry, terrible handwriting, and I'm a writer, so there's the irony
Welcome.
for you. So Jacqueline Benson, I'm with Authors Against Book Bans. We are a nationwide organization of writers who are trying to protect the scope and diversity of library collections. Obviously, we have some stake in this since we're the folks writing the books. I myself am a historical fantasy novelist. Wanted to speak to SB 208 in support of this bill. At Authors Against Book Bans, we have been concerned about the exponential rise in incidents of the removal of books from school libraries in particular, and the nature of the books that are being removed. So from 2022 to 2023, we had PEN America recorded 3,362 cases of book bans. The following year, 2023 to 2024, that went up to over 10,000 books that were removed from school collections. So we're seeing a very strong increase in this activity. The sort of books that are being taken out of these collections are 44% of them are books that represent people of color. 39% of them represent LGBTQ characters. There are strong signs that these bans are related to viewpoint in the content of the books as opposed to obscenity, which is often the catchphrase that's used to justify removing these books from their collections. Two of the most frequently banned books last year were Toni Morrison's Bluest Eye and Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale. I think it would be very clear to any writer and anyone who is interested in literature that these are books with a clear historical, literary, educational value that are now being denied to students because of individual parents who deemed aspects of their content offensive. freedom of access to information is a vital part of any democracy. I think we can all agree on that point. I believe that school librarians need our support and protection from efforts by individual parents or even folks outside of the community seeking to impose their own definitions of what is harmful or inappropriate on the rest of the community. And this bill would provide reasonable guidelines for school librarians to adopt policies that protect their collections from these viewpoint motivated book bans, but establish a fair and reasonable process for contesting legitimately inappropriate materials, one where the librarians, who are the experts, have a seat at the table. I know there have been other books related to library collections that are in front of the legislature this year, and in those, librarians aren't really given a seat at the table, and I think it's important for them to have a voice. It's part of why I'm here. I think that there are also legislative efforts this year that would increase the liability for school districts and sanctions against educators and librarians for providing materials that are deemed harmful to students. But again, these definitions of harmful have been applied in very broad ways that aren't limited to the legitimate accepted definition of obscenity under free speech legislation. I believe that policies like this will result in an expansion of soft censorship, if that's a term that you guys are familiar with, where librarians are going to be clearing books out of their collections because they are scared. And so the liability clause in this bill would offer some protection for librarians. It would show that we are giving them some trust and support as we still have those reasonable processes in place if there are individual cases that come up where a piece of material that is not appropriate ends up in a library collection. I think that this bill would protect school librarians who are doing their job in a responsible and informed manner, and that's why I am in support.
Are you done?
Okay,
Wait.
Oh.
Any questions from this
that's what I was
committee
waiting for.
members? Seeing
Anything?
none, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Deborah House.
I'm going to be running over to conference. Oh, then to introduce them. They'll catch me up, I'm sure.
Morning, welcome.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Ward, members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Deborah Howes. I am president of the American Federation of Teachers, New Hampshire, and I am here in support of SB 208. I will not, go over my testimony in length, but I will hand it to you afterwards. I want to reiterate a few points. We feel that SB 208 gets the balance right in developing a library curation procedure and policy. It balances the rights of students with the rights of the community to decide what goes into that collection, how to have a policy, a known and predictable policy of how to challenge material in the collection, and how to let all the stakeholders have a voice in that challenge process so that everyone's rights can be respected and decisions can be made. And if material truly is problematic and offensive, it can be removed. So students do indeed have a First Amendment right to have a wide variety of materials available through their school libraries. It does need to be age appropriate, but that term, that term is somewhat ill-defined, so we have to be careful in just letting one person decide that. This bill gets it right by having a whole panel of people review anything that is challenged, including people with expertise in what is developing it mentally appropriate at different levels. It never takes away any parent's right to decide what is right for their own student to read. It does include a parent from the community on the review panel. It does require that any challenged work or material be reviewed in its entirety, which passes the First Amendment test, so you're not violating students' rights. So it does many things here that are right. I do agree with the Prime sponsor's request to amend this to take out the public library part, because our public libraries do have trustees and they operate a little bit differently, but the ones that we're aware of also have robust collection, curation, and challenge policies in place already. But we are in support of this bill. We feel it balances the rights, and it will save the state money in the long run, because it will avoid lawsuits. Because if you pass some of the other bills that are being proposed, you will be facing more lawsuits. So we support this because it does respect students' rights. It does respect parents' rights, because they can always determine what their own children can read, but not what other children can read. Thank you very much, and I will hand my testimony in.
Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you
Okay.
very much. Emery Banfield.
Good morning. Emery Banfield, parental rights advocate in New Hampshire for about 20 years. And I actually oppose this bill. I just don't think it does what we need it to do. Currently, parents do have an opt-out. They do have the ability to opt out when materials are assigned to their children, but when it's in a school library, parents don't always know what's in there. So one thing that could improve a law would be to have these books identified, a rating system similar to what, if you go to the movie theater, they've rated the movies, and a parent can say, you know, no to their 12-year-old, you're not going to see the NC-17 movie. So I think that's kind of the issue, is that we're not identifying books in the library so parents can make those decisions. StopItNow.org is an organization dedicated to fighting against child sexual abuse, and they have this on their website. Showing pornographic pictures to a child is considered sexual abuse. Child sexual abuse can include non-touching behaviors. So this is just one of many books, and I will pass this around, that is available to children. And as you can see, this is a picture of what appears to be a boy giving oral sex to another male. Those are the kinds of things that I think parents are really bothered by. So there's a difference between an offensive book and an obscene pornographic book. Parents can opt out of objectionable materials if they know about them ahead of time. But when those materials cross over to books that are pornographic and would be considered child sexual abuse, then those books should not be available to children in a school library, and they should be located in the adult section of a public library. This is common sense, which we seem to have lost. Forcing taxpayers to fund what is considered by the district as child sexual abuse is not right, and what may be considered criminal. It is okay for the state to say this kind of content is not okay in a public school library. In a school library. Nothing in this testimony supports book bans. No one has ever suggested book banning. This is about limiting access to children the same way we limit access to pornographic sites when they turn on their Chromebooks. The phrase, "I know it when I see it," was used in 1964 by a United States Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart to describe his threshold test for obscenity in Jacob Bellis versus Ohio. We have enough information to know when a book is crossing over into obscene. This legislation does not go far enough to protect children. I had my oldest son's friend come over when they were little, and his mother did not allow him to read the Harry Potter books, and my son was allowed to read the Harry Potter books. I didn't undermine her by getting the Harry Potter book out and making that accessible to her son. I respected her. I respected her role. We had a difference of opinion, and that's okay. But can we show some respect to parents? By not respecting the role of parents, this just causes them to find alternative schools, use school choice programs. I mean, we have, no, you can't use this EFA, you know, and if you don't want kids to leave your public school, then you have got to make it more family friendly. The issues that I have with the bill, it doesn't go far enough to address these areas. Censorship should apply to pornographic and obscene content. I think that's a no-brainer. Everybody in the bill, it says everyone has a freedom to read, but that doesn't include giving a child pornographic content, since that's child sexual abuse. And the collaboration factor, where the school board's administration is included, but the school district governance association is not included. That's another organization in this state that needs to be included in these bills. I think that's all I wanted to bring up. Sorry, I think there's two parts. Pornographic obscene material needs to be removed. There needs to be a bill that says that. Everything else, how about we just identify it so parents can restrict their own children, but they've got to know about it in order to restrict it. So I think there's two areas, and I just, I don't see it in this bill.
Okay. Questions from the committee members? Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. You brought up the course material law that we have. I was the sponsor of that. That gives parents 2 weeks notification to look at course materials. It does not include library materials, but the reason that I put that's actually the reason I ran for office, was because my son was subjected to materials in school that were considered age appropriate. And as the sponsor has stated, that age appropriate is ill-defined. When he came before this actual Senate committee, would you believe that he said to the committee, I now have images in my head that I can't get out? Isn't it true that once they take out books that are not already vetted by parents, that sometimes it can do damage for a long time?
Yes, I've seen that personally. I've heard from children personally. Kids are not comfortable. I mean, we've had kids actually go before school boards and say, and read even some of it and say, this makes me feel very uncomfortable. But we do have a way to do that. We have to make the material available so parents can see it. They know their children best, and then they can restrict it. The objectionable material law, I mean, this was years ago where it originally started. That was a compromise because parents did want things removed, and instead of removing so the teacher would have to remove it for all, we came up with that compromise so parents can step in and say, I want something different for my child. But when they're not even aware, there's almost this movement or this people wanting to keep parents in the dark too. So just make them aware. If you truly want parents to be the gatekeeper, you've got to make them aware, just like the rating system when they walk into a movie. If 12-year-old says, Mom, I want to go see this movie, and Mom looks at it, says it's NC-17, they're going to probably say no, but it gives them that information, and we're not even doing that. Is that it?
Thank you very much. Takes care of the list that I have of people who like to speak. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to talk, have their voice heard on 209? 208? If not, this closes the hearing on Senate Bill 208. The next one is Senate Bill 209. And Senator Abbas will introduce that one.
This one. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Senator Darrell Abbas. I represent District 22, and I'm here to introduce and testify in support of Senate Bill 209. I did put this bill in on behalf of a constituent who is in Florida, which I'm very happy for him. He could not be here today, but I do have, he did provide me a letter that I can provide to the committee and hand out to everyone. And basically, in its simplest form, what this bill does, customarily when there's a school building project, they do they retain a owner's project manager at some point. What this would do is require that when any school is applying for building aid, that the owner's project manager be retained in advance. The reason for that is, some of these applications get approved before they really have all their ducks in a row. It's kind of critical to have that project manager in place. You don't want to approach them and say, "Oh, we have this X amount of dollars to spend on a project. What can you do for us?" You kind of it's really wise to have that person there when you're getting this off the ground. I think they're part of the budgeting process. And obviously, if they're going to be the project manager, they'll have a good idea on whether you're going to be able to stay within that budget. I know from what occurred in Salem, I witnessed the renovation of 7 different schools in that town. And our last project, the middle school, we actually spent $16 million less than what the warrant article passed permitted the school to do. There's actually a warrant article that's going on the ballot now to make it so the school can't spend that money. That was put in by the school. So, because they came that far under budget by having a project manager from the start, and they're involved in the application process. So this really is kind of, to me, a housekeeping bill to really make sure that the money and state aid that goes to building aid is used responsibly.
Okay.
And I encourage everyone to review the letter. I think they did a much better job explaining this bill than I just did. Unfortunately, you couldn't be here today.
Okay. I guess I was a little bit, I didn't really understand what the owner's project manager, what that meant. What do you mean by the owner's project manager?
That's the term that's just used throughout the RSAs, but basically it's really the project manager retained by the school. Why it's called
Okay,
owner's
so
project
just
manager.
the project manager retained by the school, okay. Because I thought owners, who owns this thing?
I went to the same, I'm like, why is it called? That seems like an extra word that doesn't need to be there, but rather than change all the RSAs, I just kept it
Okay,
consistent.
so this is the term used throughout? Okay,
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Senator Altshul, you probably missed most of what Senator Abbott said. We're talking about school building and having a project manager engaged and ready to go when the money becomes available.
And my recommendation, as much as you probably want to hear my testimony, I would reading the letter does a better job explaining it than I did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody who wants to speak? Is there a list? Nobody wants to speak. Okay. So we have this letter from Trident that is going to explain to us what this is all about. Okay. Well, we'll read it. Anybody else in the audience who likes to speak on this bill? If not, that closes the hearing on SB 209. Okay, this is 33, okay. The next bill we have is Senate Bill 33. Relative to the regulation of public school materials, and the sponsor is Senator Abard. Senator Abard here? I don't see him. Is he gonna come? Do you know? If not, I'll have somebody else introduce it. Should I have somebody else introduce it? Okay. Why don't I have Senator Abbas introduce the bill for Senator Abel?
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Senator Darrell Abbas. I represent District 22, and I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 33 relative to the regulations of public school materials. I get the feeling that the prime sponsor will be here and would like to testify at some point, so I'll just yield my testimony and
Okay,
allow the hearing
thank
to
you.
continue. Thank you.
Very Christina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. Barry Christina from the New Hampshire School Boards Association. I didn't testify on Senator Altschuller's bill, more so in the interest of time, but I am going to provide some full testimony on Senate Bill 33. To be clear, the School Boards Association is neutral on both Senate Bill 208 and Senate Bill 33. In previous years, last session, I believe 2 sessions ago, there were bills relative to school boards having to adopt policies on reviewing library materials or reviewing curricular materials. NHSBA has no objection to that. I believe I wrote a proposed amendment for House Education 2 sessions ago and a proposed amendment for Senator Lang on, I believe it was Senate Bill 523 or House Bill 523 of last year. So we support the idea or the concept of a school board having to adopt a policy for parents to be able to challenge a book in the library or challenge some curricular material that is being offered. Specifically as to Senate Bill 33, though, we do have a couple things that we hope, a couple aspects for the committee's consideration and for possible amendments. First, I'm on page 1, no later than November 1st, 2026. That's a long time away. I just in looking at our process for reviewing bills and crafting sample policies, we think a January 1st, 2026 would be doable for us, presuming this bill became law and were signed into law and became effective, let's say July 1 or August 1. I think we could draft a sample policy in the meantime, get it out to our school boards around the beginning of school, say a Labor Day timeframe, and give them 3 or 4 months to work on their policy at the local level. One concern the School Boards Association does have is on page 1 and 2. The timelines, I'm on page 1, line 25, within 10 days of receipt of the complaint, line 29, within 15 days of receipt of the complaint, and then on page 2, within 5 calendar days, within so on and so forth. Those timelines may be workable if there is one book that's being challenged in a library or in a classroom. But anecdotally, I can tell you some of the challenges that have come forth to school districts in New Hampshire have contained multiple challenges or multiple requests for materials to be reviewed. So one book, that timeline is workable. If a parent comes in with 5 books or 10 books that they want reviewed, this timeline is not going to be workable both for the superintendent, for the parents, for the principal to review, for the school board to make a note or to hold a meeting to review it. One of the and I can follow up with written comments and proposed amendments. One of the in the proposed amendment I gave to Senator Lang last year, we put a provision in my proposed amendment: timelines established in this section may be extended by A, mutual agreement by the parent or permanent guardian. B, for a reasonable period when either the complaint under review includes more than one book or one material, or when there are pending additional materials complaints from the same or other complainant, and then so on and so forth. So that's a concern that we have. The other aspect is the timeline. I'm on page 2, line 18 through 21. Within 15 calendar days at which the appeal is heard, the local school board shall issue a written decision that is one signed by all school board members, voting in the majority to affirm, reverse, or modify the decision of the principal. Some school boards meet once a month. Could they come into the central office and sign the document? Presumably, if there could just be maybe a notation in there that, an electronic verification would be sufficient, an email to the superintendent, an email to the board chair saying, I, John Doe, school board member, hereby agree with the decision of the board on such and such a date. I'm just trying to look at this practically. A lot of school boards don't necessarily meet over the summer as well, too. I think that's about it. We think the bill is overall pretty reasonable. We think it's something that's workable. I'll get you some proposed amendments via email, maybe by the end of the week or so. And I'll comment on that as well too, with some comments about Senate Bill 208. But again, I didn't want to testify on both bills, more so in the interest of time for the school board. But if you want us to adopt a policy on reviewing library materials or curricular how curricular decisions or curricular materials are selected, we're happy to do that. We've got no objection to that. We would like a little conversation though with the timelines and the wiggle room and the standards for review and what the school board is going to be considering when they're looking at the material and whatnot. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Any help you can do, give us, it would be very much appreciated.
Absolutely.
So, any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see Senator Avard is here to introduce his bill.
Trying to get you on time, I apologize.
I know.
Energy, we have a pretty controversial bill there. For the record, I'm Senator Kevin Avard, prime sponsor of the bill, and I like the fact that the previous testimony said that the bill's reasonable. I'm open up for amendments if that's something that the committee would entertain. I just think this is a good bill that really supports parents' interests and as well as with the children. And if multiple books are necessary to be reviewed, if there needs to be flexibility, we're all happy to help out with that as well. We don't want to be over stringent in that making it so that it's not workable. But if you can entertain some amendments, I'm very happy to do so.
Any questions? Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. On your bill, on page 1, on line 9, you include plays, dances, or other representations. Volunteers, guest speakers. So that would be, I read that to be all school assemblies or any kind of a school assembly. So if it does it, my first question would be, are you intending for that to apply to school assemblies?
I think I would have to, yeah. If it's lewd, if there's lewd behavior or lewd activity going on and parents are extremely offended by it, then absolutely.
Okay, may I follow up, Madam Chair?
Follow up.
So, if a school assembly hasn't happened yet, how would a parent know, or how would anybody know that it's lewd, and what do you mean by lewd? Can you define that?
Overly sexual in nature, extremely suggestive sexually in nature. That could be one. Maybe anti-Christian, anti-Jewish in its or Muslim, or anything that could be extremely offensive to individuals that their sensitivities would be civil rights might be violated. Even if if it was anti-African American or white supremacist in nature, anything that be something similar to that, absolutely. How would they know? I don't know.
Last follow-up, Madam
Follow-up.
Chair. So currently, February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and in high schools across the state, there are programs to draw attention to teen dating violence, and and prevention efforts. But if we're talking about prevention efforts, you have to know what are you preventing, and would an assembly or books that describe what happens in a situation of teen dating violence, it sounds like that might fall under this bill and would be possibly taken out of circulation
have to
for the
see it.
students.
They have to see it, and again, this allows the parents to make their objections, and of course, if the objections goes before the principals, then obviously the principals has discretion, then it goes before the school board. This basically is about the process, and it gives the parents voice in making their objections, and instead of being drowned out and say, well, you know what, too bad, good luck, this is how we're doing it. This gives the parents the rights to speak up, and I think that's the intent of this bill. They can be denied.
Senator Sullivan?
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking my question. So in that example that was just given, I mean, in this day and age, it's very easy to get information to parents about who a speaker is that's coming in, and there's likely YouTube videos of previous speeches, and parents can, get a heads up as what they're speaking to. But would you agree that in some situations like the one that was just described, there may be students who have been subjected to sexual violence, and this could be very triggering for them, and parents would want the heads up to let them choose
Absolutely.
whether they could participate or not?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And again, it gives the parents the privilege and the right to object based on their preference, whatever, and they should have that right instead of being drowned out or called whatever. I'm not going to go there. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I want to follow up on Senator Sullivan's question. So it is currently available to parents and guardians the option for children for whom a particular subject matter, like teen dating violence, may be trigger a trauma response in someone who may have experienced that. And so there is already an option and an opportunity for that parent or guardian to say, you know what, this is, I see what's happening, that's going to be coming up, and I think it would be better for my child to not participate in that particular assembly, performance, whatever. Why would it be okay for one family's decision to have to apply to the entire school?
That's a good question, and I thank you for it, because they have a right to speak up. That's why. They have a right to make their objection known without being bullied, without being traumatized by the system. They have a right to speak up, make their voice known, and if their voice is rejected, then so be it. But this gives them that privilege and right to speak up and use the process.
Senator Sullivan?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Does this bill, is the intention is to give parents the information ahead of time so that students are not going to an assembly experiencing something they maybe shouldn't, and then dealing with the fallout after the fact?
There really is a responsibility of parents here to do their own homework, all right? If it catches them off guard, well, then that's because they're not engaged. But this gives them the ability, if the information comes before them, maybe it came late, and they don't want a repeat of a particular topic or subject or material matter that comes before them. So this gives them the ability to speak up. That's all this is doing. It's giving them that ability. It doesn't necessarily tell them beforehand what's going to be done. There is a responsibility on the parents to do their homework as well. But engaged parents, when they are engaged, should not be discouraged from having the ability to speak up to the principals or the school boards without being shamed, shouted down, or demonized at a school board meeting or before the principal. this really gives the parents the ability to speak up.
Just one more.
My last question. Thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging my last question. Thank you, Senator Avard, for indulging my last question. I am back to page 1, lines 6 through 10 of your proposal, and it's broad. Could you give some examples of things that, would fall under this that perhaps inspired you to file this legislation?
Well, I think it was a couple of years back, maybe last session, I'm not sure. Representative Glenn Cordelli came before the House and he started to read a particular book. I'm not going to give its name of the title, but my colleagues on the other side of the aisle all began to walk out because they were offended by it. And if they were offended by it, there's no reason that should be read in schools. So again, it may be broad, but the spirit of this bill is to give the parents the ability to speak up and have a process without being demonized, both privately or publicly. And it allows them to have a say in this matter. And if school boards don't meet within a particular amount of time, that quells their ability to speak up. That's something that maybe should be dealt with in other legislation. But this gives them, I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again, but this gives the parents the ability to speak up on any material that they feel is offensive and inappropriate with their children, whether it's one book or multiple books, whether it's a play, an activity, an event. They shouldn't be shamed or shut down in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, be very quick, because we have a lot of people wanting to speak.
Very quick. So my understanding, this doesn't actually remove any materials if a parent requests that it does. It just sets up a process for them to file a complaint. And it's the school, is it the school that makes the final determination on whether to remove it?
Yes, but in a public manner so that the public can see why there's the complaint and the public is aware of the materials and they can do, that means the principal and the school board can be held accountable for their decision making. This is not something that says you can't have the material in there. And that narrative, as soon as that comes out, is a lie. It's false. This bill is about giving the parents a right to speak up in a public manner about material that is being publicly taught to their children in a public forum so that the rest of us, if we decide, can see what the complaint is about. And if the material continues to be put in there and allowed in there, it is done in a public fashion so that the people can know who on their school board approves, or their principal who approves that material. Then come next election, if you're happy with the decision, fine. But this gives the parents the right to speak up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a lot of people wanting to speak, so I'm gonna have to limit each one of you to not more than 5 minutes. And if you have written testimony, please give it to us. If somebody has said something that you totally agree with, you can just come up and say, I totally agree, and we'll put that in. So the next one is Megan Tuttle.
Seat was a little lower than I thought. I apologize. Madam Chair, is it okay if Brian Hawkins is with me? I'm not asking for double time. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Megan Tuttle. I'm president of NEA New Hampshire, representing about 17,000 educators across the state, so teachers, all the families of the ESP, et cetera. We are here today in opposition to Senate Bill 33 for some of it. And I do have written testimony I'll pass in, and I will just highlight a few points. So most school districts that we're aware of do have some kind of reconsideration policy that's already been adopted that clearly lays out a process. I have a few with me. I have seen Salem's. I've looked at Concord's where my own children go, Claremont, etc. Those processes already in place where a parent can request certain material that can be reconsidered for its use in school where their child might attend. So we certainly support the state requiring school districts have such a policy. We are completely fine with that. It's understandable. We want the policy to be understandable for school staff, students, and parents. We're hoping the legislator would consider setting a minimum standard for a policy like that. And we feel that Senate Bill 33 contains several provisions that are concerning to us and missing any kind of protections to ensure it doesn't have the effect of stifling our students' freedom to access materials that will help them learn and prepare them for the diverse and changing world that they're entering. Just a few quick ones, and I will turn this in, like I said. Page 1, line 11 through 13. It requires a local school board to adopt a policy describing the materials that are authorized to be used by, circulated to, and/or accessed by students in the local school district. The policy shall be posted on the district website. A concern we have with this is it could be read, it's one interpretation, that it's so prescriptive as it dictates every piece of paper to be proactively authorized use that could be used in a classroom. So for example, if the United States Supreme Court issued a major decision on a Monday, is the teacher allowed to use printed or online material from a news source on Tuesday that hasn't been posted on the district's website prior to this? That's one concern that we have. Parents, as it's been said already, have that ability to request alternative materials under current objectionable materials law. It also, under this bill, it also requires the school principal or designee to determine whether the material that is the subject of the complaint is harmful to minors, age inappropriate, or otherwise offensive or inappropriate for use in the child's school or for use in the context in which the material is being used. So our question is, how does the principal consistently make a determination to what's offensive? There's a lot of subjective terms in this paragraph. We have the requirement in this bill that the school board make the challenged material available to the public by placing a copy of the work and instructions describing how to access the work at the front reception desk of the school building where the work was found. We're not sure how what value this serves towards reaching a resolution about the value or inappropriateness of the material. And we do have some security concerns with potentially lots and lots of people coming into the building to look at whatever that material is at the front desk, if that's where it's being held. And then we just had a question at the end, if the complainant still does not agree with an appeal by the school board, where does the state board have the duty to settle any dispute between individuals and school systems or the Department of Education? So we're not sure if it lands solely with the school board there. So we're asking that this committee find Senate Bill 33 ITL or study further in order to establish minimum standards for school district materials objection policy that's clear, allows for professional discretion within established school district guidelines, fosters the development of an efficient collaborative process to resolve student or parent requests for materials to be reconsidered, and is still protective of the student's ability to safely access a diverse array of educational material that furthers the development as a student. And it sounds like Mr. Christina might be working towards some of that with this committee. So we'd have to see what ends up with that.
Less than a minute left.
I'm done. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Any questions? Saying none.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Jacqueline Benson.
Jacqueline Benson from Authors Against Book Bans. I won't repeat the same content I had earlier. I know we got close on time here. Concern I have particularly with this bill is the subjectivity and the broadness of the definitions of harmful to minors or otherwise offensive and inappropriate. Because this bill is so broad, the concern would be that it would facilitate the removal of legitimate educational material from school collections, which would provide students with fewer opportunities to discover the particular books that spark that passion for reading, which is
Oh, thank you. Sorry, little new. That would spark that passion for reading. Speaking as an author, but also as the parent of a student in a New Hampshire school who is a little girl with a reading disability, the importance of having broad, diverse collections of material, particularly for kids who struggle to read, where finding that book that really sparks your passion is what can make the difference for them to really start to excel as readers. It's very personal and passionate interest for me. I believe that facilitating a single parent being able to limit or restrict the viewpoints and ideas that are being shared in schools, which the broad definitions in this bill, I believe, would enable. I don't believe that that is supporting the right of parents like myself and of all parents. So, yeah. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Deborah House.
Good morning again, Chairman Ward and members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Deborah Howes. I am president of the American Federation of Teachers, and I'm here on behalf of our 3,500 members who are mostly educators in pre-K through 12 public schools, as well as university faculty, to oppose SB 33. We oppose this because we find that it is overly broad. I will not repeat everything that's been said already, but among other things, this bill seems to be broadly written in that it could apply to everything that is available in public schools, not just in the library collection, but all the papers and materials available in classrooms, including up to the moment things that you might want to use, review worksheets, anything you would be using in your classroom that would be an onerous thing to subject to review. Another concern we have with it is that it does not respect the students' First Amendment rights. The students do have a First Amendment right to access a wide variety of materials through their school library. Age appropriate, yes, but a wide variety to spark their interest, to fulfill their learning needs. We want to educate students to be lifelong learners, and they do have to be able to explore the universe through our schools. We have concerns about the workload this will be placing on our school principals or their designees. In some places, there will be zero to few complaints brought if this passes. In other places, there will be many. And if this passes, it's pretty prescriptive about the kind of policy that has to be put in place. And when you have a whole raft of complaints brought and these short timelines, someone has to review all those materials and, write up the report and get back to the parents and follow the whole process. That's work that has to get done. That's additional work you're requiring of someone. Work is not free. So is that an unfunded mandate, or are you going to pay for it? Want to bring that point up. And also, it does not allow the balanced consideration of a complete work. That's another First Amendment test that this bill fails. So we saw a better bill earlier today. This bill will indeed have First Amendment issues if you pass it. So I would consider that seriously if you decide to move forward with it. You do not want to restrict students' access to a wide variety of materials in their school libraries. And it will also be onerous to our teaching staff. Again, if you are going to subject all materials in the school to a complaint procedure, you have to allow teachers to bring in extra review materials when we realize that students are having trouble grasping a concept. We really shouldn't have to be concerned that every last worksheet or example is going to be reviewed. It it stifles the ability to meet students' needs. For those reasons, we object to this, and we really think that the previous bill goes much further in meeting the needs of our students and our schools and our communities. And I will submit my written testimony and leave questions for others behind me.
Questions
you.
from committee members? Thank you very much. Anne Marie Banfield.
Good morning again. Anne Marie Banfield, parental rights advocate in New Hampshire. I'm going to give you an example of how this worked in Bedford about 15 years ago, and Ms. Tuttle is right that this kind of procedure is done in many schools. But I accompanied parents in Bedford 15 years ago when they challenged a book that was assigned to their child in a personal finance class, and the name of the book was called Nickel and Dimed, basically Why You Can't Make It in America. And this was a personal finance class where parents expected their children to be taught, I don't know, how to balance a checkbook, simple interest, things like that. But if you actually read the book, you're going to see that it was written by a social activist pushing a very Marxist point of view in their book. And the problem was the parent was bothered because she referred to Jesus as a wine-guzzling vagrant. I had more of an issue with it because of the very narrow viewpoint of Marxism being pushed in the book in a personal finance class. I also happened to be a resident in Bedford at the time. So this was in a class. We took it to a committee. The committee said, we're just going to keep it. Sorry, parents. And then we took it to the school board, where the parents brought it to the school board. And at the school board meeting, everybody got to speak up, including students. So students could speak up. It's not, nothing is restricted in terms of, what students can say about it. And so the ultimate decision was to remove it from the class, but not remove it from the library. Those kind of books certainly should be available to students. There was nothing pornographic in it. It was just a viewpoint. And so that's available to students, but it wasn't appropriate. Everybody realized at that time, I think, that it wasn't really going to teach our kids personal finance. By removing it, it actually made the personal finance class better because there's great books out there that teach kids personal finance. So in this case, it actually worked well. There's a lawsuit. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Wit and Wisdom. It's an English language arts class, an English language arts curriculum used in some of our schools. It's actually being challenged in court right now. Well, I think maybe the court has ruled on it in Tennessee because parents were saying some of the material wasn't age appropriate for their kids to learn. Some of it wasn't so much let's get rid of it. Some of it is you're teaching this content too early and it's putting my child into a mental distress. So these kind of committees or processes are actually helping to keep families in public schools. They're not pulling their kids out. They're not removing information all the time, but maybe they're moving it to a different grade where it's more appropriate. Unfortunately, in Tennessee, the parents had to sue. But I think in order to avoid lawsuits, this might be a better process to go through and let the community determine should something like that be removed from a personal finance class. Again, went to the school library, wasn't removed from the school. So I think that this is parent friendly. I had, one time when my daughter was in school, this was many years ago, I had a teacher call me up and say, the science content we're going through is over reproduction. I looked at it, I read it, I called her back, I thanked her. It was over cells and it was very scientific. And I said, this is not a problem. But just having somebody reach out, just a teacher reach out, just to let me know. I mean, number one, what an amazing teacher. Number two, again, it's family friendly. It's not, pushing parents away. It's calling them in and saying, you know what, I respect you. And I respected her. And we had such a great relationship because that's how I was treated. And I think we've moved away so much from this. And sometimes this is what's necessary, which is too bad. It's really too bad because, you know, in Bedford, I thought that it worked well. And maybe this law isn't necessary for all schools, but maybe it is necessary because maybe some schools are not doing things like this. So for those reasons, I would definitely support this legislation. In terms of the exact language, I will leave that up to you guys. You guys determine whether or not it needs, you know, anything needs to be tweaked or not. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you. Mr. Bissonnette. Oh, there.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It's good to see you all. My name is Gilles Bissonnette. I'm a legal director at the ACLU of New Hampshire. We are here in opposition to SB 33 and just want to make a couple points and don't want to repeat some of the testimony that we've heard before. But I do kind of maybe want to start where I think there's some agreement, right? I think there is agreement that parents should have a role. Parents should be able to speak up. Parents should be able to file complaints, number one. And number two, I certainly don't have a concern with when those complaints are raised, that it's done in some sort of public process. These are government decisions. I believe strongly in government accountability. Where I think we have some concerns, though, is that this bill goes further, right? This bill goes further because it provides a standard that would apply statewide for the removal of books and curriculum material for everyone. And that includes obviously both in classrooms and in school libraries. And so when you're going to establish a standard for removal of materials, it needs to be clear, I think, to avoid arbitrariness. And we don't feel that that standard has been met here. And I'll get into that just in a minute. But number one, I want to just kind of articulate our concern that we already do have laws on some of this. I just wanted to make sure the committee was aware of it. We already have a harmful material statute in RSA 571B that kind of articulates quite clearly in the criminal context, materials that can't be disseminated to minors. There's a series of standards that are articulated in that statute. Those standards obviously are designed to memorialize constitutional protections that we have with respect to dissemination of information. Now, this bill does not have those types of standards. I just want to flag that for the committee because that is an area of potential concern when you're regulating materials that may not necessarily meet constitutional protections. I will recognize that this isn't a criminal law, right? That this is a regulatory provision, but I just do want to highlight that we have some laws on the books here, and it's unclear to me, what are we trying to regulate beyond, right, what is already regulatable under our criminal law? So I just want to set that issue aside and just go back to the standard piece. I do think vagueness permeates the standard articulated in this bill. The standard here is material that is, quote, harmful to minors, age inappropriate, or otherwise offensive or inappropriate for use in the child's school. And we just think the lack of definitions around those standards is something of concern. And in fact, given this lack of definitions, we feel that school librarians and members of local government bodies and the public at large will have no real meaningful way to discern what sorts of materials are harmful, age inappropriate, offensive, or inappropriate. And as a result of this lack of definition, these terms are susceptible to multiple interpretations, and all, I think, frankly, guarantee that the challenge process will result in the removal of materials, including in libraries, school libraries, based on the mere dislike of ideas in those materials without regard to students' First Amendment rights to receive information. And what I'm referring to there is the PICO decision, where a plurality of the Supreme Court concluded that there's a right to obtain information there in the the school library context, and that viewpoint discrimination cannot be a part of those decisions. And I have a real fear when we have a bill that may not have clear standards, that we are going to start venturing into a space where viewpoint-based decisions are made, depriving students of their right to information. And I would also note, of course, given that this bill does impact school libraries, there's not language in the bill that even says, in that context, that materials can't be removed simply because of their viewpoint. So I would just highlight that as well. So with that, I'll just conclude my testimony. I think our principal concern here is not so much the process in the bill, but really focused on the standard used for removal. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee members? No questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mary Wilkie.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Mary Wilkie. I live in Concord. I'm a retired public school teacher and a parent of kids who went to public schools. And I certainly understand the need for parents to have knowledge of what's coming up, what kinds of things will be taught in their schools, etc. I taught in Concord, and this was one reason why we had back to school nights, so that parents could come and meet the teacher, and the teacher would give a presentation on what was going to be taught that year, how it was going to be taught, what the materials were, etc. And we had parent-teacher conferences scheduled at certain times and always available to be scheduled at the request of the parent. I'm not saying that that satisfies the whole problem, but that I'd like to put in context that this is going on. Teachers are trying to get information like this out. Teachers are trying to establish good relationships with parents. And I feel that the tone of this bill, it doesn't suggest that. It would be nice if maybe it started with, maybe the policy could say, we recommend that parents attend back to school night. We recommend that parents meet with their teachers if they have specific things that they're concerned about that might show up in the curriculum. That might be a nice prelude, because teachers do want to work as team members with parents. I agree with many things others have said, especially the statement that that has to be posted on November 1st. It's really unclear what it means to describe the materials. And Senator Avard mentioned a specific book, and I know this has been mentioned before, but I wanted to put it in the context as a teacher. If you have to actually list the specific materials, every book that that a child might read in class, those decisions don't all get made in the summer before school starts. I and my colleagues would get to know our students, and we'd have a plan for the whole year. But if I discovered that this happened one year, I had a group of students who were struggling readers. They didn't like to read, partly because they struggled so much, and anything I could do to motivate them, I would do. So it turned out somebody had seen a movie about World War II. They all got excited about it. I went to the public library, got a bunch of books about World War II. I created a bunch of assignments that I printed out of my computer, that I wrote, and gave it to them. But that was like in January. It wouldn't have been on the list if the list is specific. If the list isn't specific, if it just says books related to the curriculum, it doesn't really give parents a heads up. But if it's that specific, if it says, here are every single piece of paper your child will see, every single book your child might read, then that takes away flexibility. And I have to say, I often hear around the halls of this legislature, people refer to public schools as one size fits all. That kind of a requirement pushes you to be one size fits all. When you're trying to respond, you have a math class and a child is confused about something, or several are, you change your homework assignment that very day. And in your planning time, you say, well, I'm not going to give them this homework assignment. They're not going to get it. I'm going to give them one that'll help them get it. You can't do that in the summer ahead of time. You're trying to be responsive to individual needs, individual interests. And I just like to put that context out there. So to the extent that this is requiring people to know upfront exactly what's going to happen, we might as well just give us a book and we'll be robotic and stand up there and say, okay, turn to page 7 because it's December 1st. That's not what we do. I'd like to also say, if this is to prevent harm by letting people know in advance what's happening, and therefore they won't get exposed and they won't be traumatized, then why does it only apply to public schools? We have private schools that are getting public money. The same kind of surprise could happen in those schools. I know Often it's said people in private schools can vote with their feet, but they can't vote with their feet before the harm has happened. And finally, I would ask that maybe the complaint that somebody file could specify how their child was harmed, just so that that's clear for the principal. And again, I don't want it to sound like I'm against the communication. I'm just trying to point out some of the, I think, the implications of some of the language or the understandings that may not be correct, that people just have a whole list. They know exactly what they're doing before they walk in the first day of school, and they're going to stick to that program no matter who's in their class. And that's just not the way it is. So thank you. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much. Heather, Roby Tal.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. My name is Heather Robitaille. I'm a member of the Merrimack community, and I'm a proud parent of a child in the Merrimack School District. I'm here today because I'm opposed to Senate Bill 33. I believe this bill attempts to create a tool for banning certain books in New Hampshire. Merrimack, like most school districts, and it's been mentioned, have policies in place already for the reconsideration of materials, making this bill feel unnecessary and restrictive. Our librarians are professionally trained to select and curate age-appropriate materials for their public school collections. Allowing school boards to ban books undermines and devalues expertise that our librarians possess, and it subjects our school children to personal and political agendas, which have no place in our public schools. Merrimack recently had a literacy night. We do use the Wit and Wisdom curriculum. It was amazing to hear from the educators the difference that they've seen in our students. All the reading materials were made available to the parents. They were out on tables so people could actually look, and I got to sit in on what a lesson for a fourth grader would be, learning about the circulatory system in our bodies and the metro station in New York and how they were connected, and it was fascinating. I can say that parents have the ability to speak to school administrators and boards about any concerns that they have. As a parent, I'm concerned that a lot of the titles that could be targeted for censorship isolate and discriminate against people of color, the LGBTQIA plus community, and students and families from these communities have a right to be represented in their public school collections. Representation definitely matters. I just want to share a quick story. My daughter, when she was 4 years old, was prescribed reading glasses for a very significant prescription. I never thought much of it in all the books that we read together, but she loved being read to. And there was one time we read a book called Bear Wears Glasses, and her face lit up and she said, "Oh, they're just like me." And until that point, I hadn't made the connection of just how much she could see that she was different from her peers and from characters. But because she was able to see this book, she made that connection and felt seen. It was really powerful. And I can only imagine that for students, adolescents, that might have other experiences that are different from their peers, how they would feel be represented in their collections, and how they would feel knowing that parents or school boards are taking books away or curriculum materials away that represent them. That breaks my heart as a parent. Public schools are for all children, and families have the opportunity to go to private or religious schools if that's something that they feel is a better fit for their family. The point was made that this bill gives parents the right to speak up. And like I said, parents can speak up. I am confident that if I have concerns, and when I have had concerns, I've been able to reach out to administrations at my daughter's school, as well as our school board. So there are channels in place. And I really think that our children should be taught to be critical thinkers and be aware of the diverse world around them and not subjected to the censorship of personal ideologies. So I think that in this live free or die state, creating a bill that could ultimately be used as a tool for censorship is not what we stand for, and we should trust our professionally trained librarians and administrators to make appropriate decisions regarding public school materials. Parents already have the ability to voice concerns, and I believe this bill is unnecessary and will add to the workload of public school boards and administrators and be leveraged as a tool for harmful censorship. So I ask the committee to please oppose Senate Bill 33 as written because of the vague and subjective language and undue strain and limitations it will add to our public school teachers, administrators, and school boards. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions by Senator Altshuler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Robitel, for your testimony. And so I was struck by the example that you used of your daughter not wearing glasses, now wearing glasses, seeing herself represented. And I think you used the example of that you couldn't imagine if wearing glasses reflected in literature was offensive to somebody, how that would make her feel. And I'm wondering if you had considered the social mores that are reflected in children's literature. And I'm thinking, like, had you considered that in New Hampshire, marriage equality was passed in 2009, and it was passed, but we already had lots of families that were two dads, two moms, one dad, one mom. And there's a book, Tango Makes Three, about two dads that are penguins, and then they have their baby Tango, that was published in 2005. And that book reflects a child's experience of having a different a family that looks a little bit different. And if that book, which has been challenged hundreds and hundreds of times since when it was published in 2005, we didn't catch up till 2009. So how would your family have experienced something like that?
So first off, I love that book. We have it in our collection, and we have read it. And my daughter and I had the conversation of love makes a family. But when I think about children who do have two mothers or two fathers, or different than what some people might consider the traditional family, I can't imagine how it would make them feel if they were told that that book can't be shared in their school, or if they wind up drawing a picture of their two moms. Do they not get to share that material now because it's objectionable to people? It really creates concerns of how this will affect especially young children's self-esteem, their ability to integrate with their peers, and that will only increase as they grow on to adolescence.
Other questions? All set? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Representative Timothy Horrigan.
Thank you very much. I'm Resident Timothy Horrigan from Stratford County District 10, which is the town of Durham. So I'm opposed to this bill for several reasons. Well, first of all, I think children, can't grow up, can't learn unless they're, exposed to materials that at least challenge them in some way. And they are people, part of growing up is becoming independent of your parents. So, they are human beings in their own right with their own opinions, their own lives. So, they're not everything is, the parents are an important part of our life, but not everything is about their parents. And also in this case, we're asking the parents, to take materials out of the libraries or out of the school, not just for their own child, but for everybody else in the school. So that's that's not a good thing. Also, strictly speaking, even if you think this bill is a good idea, well, first of all, it's unnecessary. Schools of all types already deal with these issues already, maybe some more effectively than others, and that's not going to get any better or worse if you pass this bill. Also, it's in the RSA about school boards, so that applies only to schools that are part of a school district with a school board. And there's also a question like, is this an issue that parents should be taking up with the school board? Perhaps it'd be more appropriate to go first to, the teacher, the principal, the superintendent before getting the school board involved. But also that leaves out, I guess, and I'm not the first person to point this out, but doesn't leave out charter public schools, which are public schools. It doesn't leaves out public academies. It also leaves out private schools. It also leaves out the private schools who are being subsidized by the so-called EFA program, or I like to call it the school voucher program. And those issues are going to turn up in all those educational environments as well. So if you actually need a bill to deal with this, it should deal with the full gamut of publicly financed education, not just the school conventional schools in the school district. So it's I guess I'll also on a semi-related note, there were two authors in particular who were singled out during previous witnesses' testimony. One was Barbara Ehrenreich. She wrote a book called Nickel and Dime, which is an excellent book about trying to survive on minimum wage jobs. So it's probably like an extremely appropriate book for high school age students or even for adults. I've read it myself and I highly recommend it. So I guess she passed away in 2022, so she is a social activist. I don't know why that's a bad thing, but she was a social activist and charged that she was a Marxist. Not that it's illegal or necessarily wrong to be a Marxist, but that's like a pretty exaggerated, she's a fairly mainstream, progressive thinker. But I guess maybe all progressives, including myself, maybe we're all Marxists and social activists, who knows, but... So that's actually a very good book. It was probably appropriate for a high school curriculum, and I know it was controversial several years ago. And also Senator Avard, and he couldn't even bring himself to mention her name, but I happened to attend a lecture sponsored by Gibson's Bookstore a few days ago, which she hosted along with a trans author named Jennifer Finney Boylan. So she actually talked about that book, which is called 19 Minutes, and it was actually mostly about school shootings, but there was a scene about a sexual assault, and out of context, that was pretty upsetting hearing it on the floor of the House when a particular representative insisted on reading it. But that was more just... that was the wrong context for it. In the context of the book, it wasn't necessarily gratuitous, but that's a well-known local author. Just thought I'd defend her. And also, as I mentioned, the other author, she was kind of hosting an interview with an author named Jennifer Finney Boylan, who's trans, and I don't know whether any of her books have gotten involved in controversies over what should be included in school libraries, but she's a well-known writer who is trans, and unfortunately, there is lots of people who think just being trans, just existing, is offensive, and then there's other families, who have trans parents or even trans kids who just are probably offended by people who want to erase them, and that same goes for families that are different in lots of other ways. And we've seen, this is probably actually sort of an extenuating circumstance, but this could be used. Also, to protest materials that are racist, anti-gay, anti-trans, so that could be turned both ways on this, in ways that perhaps the sponsors of the bill don't necessarily intend. So anyway, I think this whole bill is unnecessary. So even if it was a good idea, you'd need to totally rewrite it to apply to all sorts of public schools, and I just don't think this isn't what the school boards should be doing necessarily, and so it's just not. This bill is just not helpful. So I urge you to not pass it. So I'd be happy to take any questions if anybody wants to ask me any. But
I should mention that the book that you spoke of is fine for anybody to read it, but it was not the book to have in a personal finance class. We didn't teach finance. That's what the objection was.
Okay, as someone who read the book and vividly remembers reading it, I understand that's the objection was.
That was the only thing that you can read the book, but don't have it as a book to read.
Okay, that was
in a personal finance class. That was the argument.
It did raise some difficult issues beyond, and certainly I know the person who was offended by it. I understand why. Just the mere fact that
That
the
was-
author
that
was
was just-
a social activist was enough to make it bad, but I thought it was,
No,
I thought it was a good book to read, so,
But that's fine.
yeah.
Any questions from the committee members?
All right.
Okay.
And actually,
Thank
that
you
book,
very much.
and that book actually did make some criticisms of like liberals like me too. So, but it attacked both sides. But thanks.
Look, there are all kinds of us, aren't there? Okay, that has taken care of all the ones that I had on my list here. You did also very well that we actually have a few minutes. So if somebody here has something that they want to say or add to it, we have a few more minutes that we can use. So, nobody? Okay. Thank you all very much for coming, and this ends the public hearing on from the Senate Education Committee and on 33FN. Thank you all for coming.